of flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and we are also here on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We stream at those times at richarddugan.com. We are also podcasting these programs at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, many other locations as well. We're on YouTube where you can watch these videos. We hope that you will. And also subscribe, or at the very least, click the notification so that when a new conversation is posted, you will have access to that and be able to listen to it and share it with others as well. And I hope you will, especially with this program today. It's very interesting, and I think you're going to find it not only interesting, it's heartwarming as well. It's tragic, and there's you could not have written a movie with all of the elements in this one. And we're going to talk about that with our very special guest. But I want to remind you also to spend some time going within and listening to that still small voice during the decade of perfect vision. Just go into that quiet, still, calm, peaceful place. We'll find out about what role that played in our guest's life, as well as her life was literally turned upside down. And also a reminder that if you'd like to support the work we're doing, we have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. With all of that being said, we have a very special guest here. She's a local Santa Barbaran, and she tells a story. She refers to this particular work as her memoir. It is a true story. I actually was living here in Santa Barbara during the time of this particular event, and it was sort of a culmination of events as well. Kim Cantin is my guest. Her book is Where Yellow Flowers Bloom. We'll find out about the aspect of the title, which I find fascinating. It, again, is a true story of hope through unimaginable loss. And Kim, I want to first of all thank you for joining us here on the program and sharing what is, I'm sure, even to this day, still not an easy conversation to have with people.
Good morning, Richard. Yeah, you're right. It's still not an easy conversation to have, but thank you for having me here.
Sure. Now, I'm curious. We're going to go back a little bit. I'm going to just give a very brief synopsis of what transpired. On the 10th of December of 2017, there was a fire that started what I thought was way off to the east, not going to bother us in the least. We're good. And yet we have a gentleman by the name of Mike Williams. He is our Mike in the Morning host every Monday through Friday here on AM 1290 and FM 96.9. And he shared with me shortly after the fire started, he says, "Oh, no, it's coming all the way. The scenario is just too ripe, if you will." And that's exactly what it did. It came all the way across the mountain range. Ojai was affected and many other communities, and it burned all the way to the burn scars of what was then the Zaka fire. There was another one as well. I can't recall the name of it. Anyway, and it just burned everything to the ground for a week or two, maybe more. But that wasn't the significant aspect of this. It was then the torrential rains, if you want to call it that, a massive downpour that was actually predicted several days earlier. And in that downpour, it generated a mudslide above the mountains of Montecito and other parts in that area, Carpinteria. I don't know if Summerlin was hit at all. But it was so devastating to the extent that we lost 23 lives. And of those lives, 2 of them were your husband and your son.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, certainly I'm going to have you tell the story about how that all transpired that early morning. And again, as I said before, I remember that day, the 9th of January, 2018. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe what I was seeing as far as the video. And I mean, it was just astounding that more people didn't lose their lives. I mean, that's, I would have to say, rather miraculous. In your case, we're talking about 3:30. I don't remember what day it was, but it was the 9th of January. And obviously everybody's sleeping, but everybody's a little bit, on edge, knowing that there's the potential for something pretty catastrophic to happen. And that's exactly what happened. Give us your rendition from the time you were awakened by something rather loud.
Sure. So it was, I think, probably around 3:15, 3:30 in the morning, and my husband and I were woken by heavy rain, and we had the car staged outside, ready to go. We had sandbags in case, and we had a hotel reservation. If it got heavy, we were just staged just to get out and be safe. And so we got up. My husband went to look on the house, around the house, and we told the kids, "Get your clothes on. We're going." And tragically, we didn't make it out in time. When what we didn't know was part of the mountain came down, and it was coming down with boulders and 100-year-old trees and debris, almost like a slip and slide. And there was a creek across the lane from us and a couple houses, and there was a curve in the creek, and it didn't make that because the creek and the underpass got all blocked up with massive car-sized boulders. And so a neighbor saw a 30-foot plume of mud, debris, and car-sized boulders plume up to the sky and crash down on our home and our neighbor's home. And it crashed down on my home with my family in it. My husband may have seen it coming because he opened the front door. He's like, "Get out now." And then as soon as he opened the front door, he slammed it. He says, "Get back door now." And he just blew past me in the living room. And I went to grab the dog's leash. I had no idea what was coming. I had no idea. And the kids were in their rooms trying to get their clothes on. And then all of a sudden the mud was at my waist. And pretty soon I couldn't stand up and I was under the mud. And then I woke on a debris pile about 2 football fields away. I was wrapped in electrical wires, very injured in an intersection.
Wow. And you have no recollection from the moment you went under until you were on that debris pile.
No, I remember being under. And being hit by everything. Pieces of furniture, granite, probably bricks. And I remember I was goofy. I opened my eyes and I was talking to God. And I said, "If you want me to die right now, I will, but show me the light." And so I opened my eyes, but I opened my eyes in the mud and debris. So what that was doing is scratching on my cornea. And then I must have probably got a traumatic brain injury. Like I got hit in the head. And then I remember taking my last breath and it was mud, not air. It was like, ugh, and it was just mud filling me up. And I just thought at that point I was done.
And how long was it before someone came along and got you out of that tangle, or did you get yourself out?
I don't really know, but I would guess, here's my guess. The mudslide hit, I think, about 3:45, maybe. It was traveling at 30 miles an hour, I think. I think because it was dark when I kind of came to on the debris pile and my head was facing down and my feet were facing up on the debris pile, probably a 30 to 40 degree angle, which probably saved my life. It probably drained my lungs. I think I was there a couple hours and maybe by I know I was in the hospital at 8:30 in the morning. So maybe they got me at 7 or 6:30. So I think I was there unconscious for a while, and then I came to, and then I just yelled and no one was there, and it was like Armageddon in a war zone. And so I just kind of tried to calm myself.
When you were, as you've described it, talking to God, what else was going through your mind at that time in terms of your faith? Because I know that there are those who will say how could God let this happen?
Mm-hmm.
And yet you're turning to him saying, wait a minute, look, you want me out? I'll go. Just show me the light, just tell me which way to go. What about your faith before and then after this horrific event took place?
Good question. I always was a person of faith, and believed in a higher power. I'm Christian, and I was a Sunday school teacher at the church up the street from us in Montecito for the middle schoolers. And so I've always had a faith, for sure. And I think that's what saved me is before the mud was like at my waist, I remember going, I said, I'm going to die tonight. Because it was just so astonishing what was going on, seeing furniture from different parts of my house floating toward me. Right. And I just said, Jesus, save me. And so I went to my faith. Interesting. In the moment where I thought I was going to die, I went straight to my faith, and then I just surrendered. And I'm a type A person, so for me to surrender is a big deal. It's not common, and I think that saved my life. To ragdoll, it's kind of like drunks in a car accident. Sometimes they make it out okay because they're so limber.
Mm-hmm.
I think I didn't fight anything, and so my body, I think, found paths of least resistance as I flowed out. So how do I feel about my faith now? That was a very complex, right? Because I knew I was this profound gratefulness that I had and my daughter had survived the unimaginable. And when you look at the car-sized boulders, 1,000 of them on my property, and the live electrical wires and everything that could have killed me or my daughter, I realized it was a true miracle that we were alive. Absolutely. She had a pocket of air buried alive in front of her face, not her kneecap, not her lower back, but the pocket of air was by her face, and it had a little hole the size of a straw out to the outside that enabled her to live. So in the hospital, when I was finding out everything that had happened, I was profoundly grateful that my life had been spared, and my daughter's. And I was tragically sad my husband's wasn't. But I don't think he did it. Yeah, so I still have a strong faith. I think I'm just grateful there's a reason. I think there's no coincidences in life, and there's a reason maybe Dave and Jack graduated. They maybe did what they needed to do on earth, and they're in pure joy, and maybe there's more for my daughter and I to do.
Kim Cantin is my guest. Where Yellow Flowers Bloom is the book we're talking about, the true story, in 2018, January. And we're going to continue that conversation here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is really a pleasure. I really do appreciate the fact that you, Kim Cantin, have joined us here on the program to share this true story. There's a part of me that just, I cannot see this being made into a movie, only because it's just, I don't know, it's just too much. It's almost too much for anyone to bear. And I still am astounded not only by the Thomas fire that perpetuated or sort of set the wheels in motion in that regard, let alone the debris flow that took place on that early morning, January 9th of 2018. Now, you and we have now lived through a rather tumultuous, rain-soaked 5 or 6 months since November of 2022.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yet, as far as I know, I have not heard of any major mudslides and homes being taken out and so forth, either because it hasn't made the news or because it didn't happen. I know that there were those who did have some damage. I recognize that all over California, let alone here on the South Coast. You chose to stay that night. You and your family chose to stay in the house that night. Rather than leaving, what perpetuated the decision to stay?
Following the directions of aware and beware. So we had evacuated, I think, 3 or 4 times during the Thomas fire, and when that happened, they set up a nice system that on your phone, you could sign up called Aware and Beware, and it would go to your phone and it would go to your email. And so we had followed the advice during that. We had evacuated. We went down to Thousand Oaks, and so, you know, we knew some rain was coming. We got the sandbags at the house. My husband had cleared out the French drain and the back line to make sure water could flow smoothly. And we were watching what the advisory said, and we were not in the mandatory evacuation. And so we just said, you know, okay, you know, let's just keep understanding, you know, what the situation is. And I did make a hotel room reservation, and I told my husband, hey, if it gets heavy, let's just have the car staged and get out of Dodge. And that was our plan. So, you know, my learning is don't rely on that stuff so much. You know, if there's any chance close by, in the vicinity, in the horizon, get out of Dodge.
Well, I know that the program Community Alert that's been on this station for 16 years. Community Alert, not if, but when disaster strikes. And obviously aware and prepare. Definitely they tell you, and this is a message that really rings home for my wife and I, because the only time in the 17 years we have lived up on San Marcos Pass, the 154 at the summit, we've been through, as you know, numerous fires. I mean, 10 or 15, but only one. And it just so happens it was the 2017 Whittier fire. And yet we had gone through Zaka and T and Jesucita, and the list goes on, never having to be evacuated until the summer of 2017. And they were always telling us, especially on Community Alert, but other places, even if you don't get the word, if you feel, tell me about your feelings, that not only maternal instinct, but also just as an individual, that intuition, that still small voice screaming, maybe, get out now kind of thing.
Didn't have it.
I say again?
Didn't have it. I didn't have that.
You didn't have that.
My husband and I, we had pretty big jobs, and we were both working in our offices that day, and we were doing our work stuff, and you know, watching the news and watching the Aware and Beware, and went and got sandbags. But if I had had any sense of what was going to happen, we would have been in Paris. We would have ran as far as we could away.
And yet you said something really, really important. And that is that obviously the good Lord had something else in mind for you and your daughter. And I think it's beautiful that you can look at your husband and son and say, oh, they graduated. They finished the work that they were doing. My father, I just lost him the beginning of March of this year. My eldest sister a year ago at the end of March, and they graduated. They were finished, and so forth. That, I would take it, that is not a perspective, the whole graduation thing, that you grasped onto right away. That must have taken some time to get to.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was in desperate grief, and then through writing the book, it kind of came to more peaceful adaptation or integration. It's not acceptance, because acceptance implies it's okay, and it's still not okay. They're gone. But I had a priest who, I think in maybe Jack's or Dave's services, he talked on that they graduated, that they're in pure joy, and that really was helpful framing for me. Because I think they're in pure joy, and certainly miss them every single day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, they were quite literally ripped from your life very fast indeed. You know, I still remember seeing the one video. A gentleman apparently was out in the street, and he pointed his camera and light up the road from where he was, and you could see the wave coming. And he said, "Move, move, move." I mean, that's
That
all
was
I heard him
Marco.
say.
That's Marco Farrell. Yeah,
Yeah.
he saw it coming. He was trying to help people.
Wow. Just incredible what you and other folks who did survive have been through. Not only the event itself, but then the process of trying to figure out, okay, now what? I've got nothing. I have my daughter at least, but I have nothing. There's nothing in the spot where we were, a scant 24 hours ago. Now what?
Yeah.
When did you begin that journey, not only mentally but physically, in terms of saying, okay, now I got to figure out what to do next because I can't stay where I'm at, that kind of thing. Tell me a little bit about that process for you.
Sure. Well, mine was complicated and complex because there were so many variables. One is I was very injured and I was in the hospital over 3 weeks. I couldn't move. I had to learn how to walk again, and I had multiple surgeries. So I was physically very injured. My daughter was in a different hospital. So that was complex. I was in shock and disbelief, hearing that half my family's gone and Jack was just missing. So I think I was just shock and disbelief at the beginning, but I was given, sedatives and painkiller because of my injuries. So I wasn't, and I was just so injured, and I had been hit in the head, and so I think I wasn't. I was just trying to get my bearings a little, and then I went into a rental home because I didn't have anything, and then I wanted to stabilize for my daughter, and then so I think all of my grief and my process was very much delayed. It was very much compartmentalized because I had so much to do. Stabilize for my daughter, job number one, right? I wanted to be her mother and let her know I am her mother, and I'm going to still take care of her. She was very frightened. And job number two, look for Jack. It's time sensitive, could be hauled away, body decaying, time sensitive. And then going through the grief process with my husband, my dog, everything I lost. So it was extended, it was complicated. And then through COVID, when I started writing the book, that was really the start, I think, of my cathartic process, from the desperate grief to the reflective process and getting to more peaceful integration.
Where Yellow Flowers Bloom, title of the book. It is a true story. As a matter of fact, it's a true story of hope through unimaginable loss. Kim Cantin is my guest, kimcantin.com. And by the way, that is KIMCANTIN.com. We certainly hope that you will avail yourselves. Go there, check out the book. It's available all over the place. Locally, there are we still have bookstores, ladies and gentlemen. They're local. They're not big chains. There's one in particular. It's called Chaucer's. It's a beautiful place there in what we refer to as, I believe it's Loretta Plaza. And we encourage you to make a trip out there, get a copy. Like I said, it's also available on Amazon. And you are listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Kim Cantin is my guest. Again, the book is entitled Where Yellow Flowers Bloom. Where Yellow Flowers bloom. It is something that happened not just to you, but it happened to a community. We were actually, you and I and the rest of us here on this side of Montecito, we were cut off from the rest of the world for quite a number of days or a week or more, if I'm not mistaken, while they not only did their search, but also did clearing of the debris, getting the freeway open and so forth. How long was it after the event, the debris flow, that you found out about your husband. And then how long after that was it that you found out about your son?
If I recall right, I very first, the next morning, I think first thing I was told about my dog. And I think what I found out later is they said that was a dress rehearsal because they knew more bad news may be coming and they wanted to know who I wanted in the room, my priest, the sister from the church, my parents. And then I think it was the day after that in the morning that they told me about Dave. He had been found, I think, about 8:30 that morning, but I think they wanted to go through the process of like proper identification.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been in surgery. And then Jack was just missing. So they'd come in and say, where do you think he was in the house? Because they're trying to logically figure it out. Do they have to clear out where the pool was? Could he have been in there, which became like quicksand? So he was just, they were searching just because I think it took them a while to find the last victim, a woman, maybe Fabiola. She was a week or so after. Like it just, it was a 30 square mile area of debris.
And you learned an awful lot about search and rescue and all that is entailed in a process that they went through. It took me 10 years to learn this process, only because I had no clue as to this process or who to call. When we moved here in 2006, in June, I looked to the north and I saw this tiny little puff of smoke. And I'm freaking out. I'm thinking, oh my God, where are we? Because I had no points of reference at that time. Of course, first of all, my wife, she looks out there. Hey, that is, I don't know if it's hundreds of miles away, but it's a long distance. I think it was up. I think it was a fire up by Kuyama, I believe it was. But anyway, and of course, as the years go by, and I experience one fire after another, and the Zaka fire the following year was really unbelievable. It took a month. And, and again, I saw that tiny little flicker of light way off into the distance, same direction as that first plume that I saw in 2006. And that was on a Sunday that I saw that. By the following Sunday, the flames had jumped multiple ridges and we went from a balcony view of the Zaka to almost a front row seat.
Scary.
But we were not evacuated. So I knew who to call. I knew what to do after, 5 or 6 years. And of course, I met Mike Williams, who is a part of the old San Marcos Volunteer Fire Department and Aware and Prepare and Wildland Residents Association. And I'm connected to all of these different people within search and rescue, within the first responders. Did you have, other than your education through Aware and Prepare, were you tied into that network in that respect? You had no clue.
No clue. I do know I had a lovely neighbor next door, and I remember her telling me with the fire, she goes, Kim, because she had lived there for 30 years. And she said, fires can move really, really fast. Like you've got to take them really seriously. And that even was an education for me. I didn't have exposure or experience to any of this stuff before. So I didn't have the understanding.
Well, I will tell you how important I think it is for us as individuals, let alone as a community, to set up a network, before these events happen. And yeah, you can set up a plan, but because you don't know how these events are going to affect your plan, the old saying about how we make plans and God laughs,
Yeah.
Yeah. But by the same token, there's nothing wrong with making a plan. Yeah, he's going to laugh, but don't worry about it, because he still loves you.
It's smart, right? It
is. It is. And so how long had you lived there in Montecito before this happened?
8 years.
Only 8 years. Had you heard any of the stories of some of the previous events that had taken place
No.
in other parts of the city or county, for that matter, in terms of some of these horrific events?
I heard about the tea fire, I think, and that was right before we had moved into town. And then someone talked about that, and they said that you could see on the hillside it was burned. I think my challenge, our personal challenge, was my husband and I, takes a couple incomes to live in town, and
Yep.
we were on the rat race and working really, really hard, and we had young kids. We really wanted to be engaged parents, and so we were busy. And so maybe we were busy.
It just
We
kind
didn't
of,
get all that.
it can get away from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're now, I would venture you are now connected to this particular network that we are
Well,
talking about.
I can tell you, my favorite people are the Montecito Fire Department, and I can tell you this January 9th, the 5-year anniversary of the tragedy where there was another evacuation warning coming for the town and heavy rain. 2 fire chiefs, one retired fire chief and the other, Kevin, who's just now retired, they both text me on a very busy day saying, are you going to be okay? And if you need anything, let me know. And so I am very connected and very,
Wow.
those people are, those fire folks are pretty darn special.
Oh yeah. They literally do go where others fear to tread,
Yeah, they're true heroes in this whole thing.
Yeah, they are angels to say the very least. And that's the one thing I love about first responders. They don't care what your politics is or how much you have in your bank account or what color your skin is or what belief system, philosophy you adhere to. They don't, it's irrelevant. You're a human being and they're there to save life and then property. And that's the thing that I love most about the first responders, including those in the medical field, who, I mean, I have to admit, I can only imagine what the medical community here in the Santa Barbara area, the South Coast, we're looking at. I mean, COVID was bad enough, but prior to that, this event here locally, they were dealing with probably things they had not seen ever.
Oh, I think 100, 150 people were injured, right? So
yeah.
We were coming in and they did Cottage Hospital's phenomenal, excellent medical care. And, but they weren't prepared to deal with mud and these people coming in with mud. I mean, they were putting shaving cream in my hair to get the clumps of mud out. They were trying to wipe me off, but where does it go? They tried to put my daughter on a chair in a shower to get it out. And so they were just hit really hard with something so unexpected. Some people weren't as recognizable, and but they did an outstanding job.
Yeah, the wonderful. I've been into Cottage Hospital once or twice, but they're it's great. It really is. Tell me about the process you've been going through in terms of your emotions. Certainly grief. I get that. I get that. Sadness and part of the grief over the loss, not only of your husband and your son, but also of your dog. That pains me because I've laid many animals to rest over my 63 years. And obviously, as I said earlier, my father and my eldest sister, in literally less than 12 months, which I thought was really very interesting that my father followed my sister, but hey, it was his firstborn and he was never the same after that.
That's compounded grief, right?
Yeah, it really is. Grief. Let me ask you about yourself and the emotions that you've been going through the process, which I'm sure you're still going through. If I may ask, are you or have you been in any kind of therapy? I know hospice provides it free and that type of thing.
It's more the question, what haven't I been in?
What haven't you been? Okay.
And look, after this happened, everything changed, right? My identity changed, right? From wife to widow. And one of the first things I said to my daughter was, we've never been through anything like this, honey. We're going to need a lot of help, and we're going to need to invest in our care and getting through this. So I really looked to what was available from Hospice of Santa Barbara that does the grief training. She got a therapist, I got a therapist. I did EMDR trauma therapy, which is this tapping thing that helps affect the nervous system from trauma for PTSD. I did group therapy. Cottage Hospital did a How We Heal group, which was for people involved in the mudslide. And that was one of the most helpful things I did because these people got what I went through.
Mm-hmm.
I went to widows group that would help me focus in on the loss of my husband and the spouse, right? Because had to think about the loss of my son and then the loss of my husband and then the loss of the dog and then the loss of my life as I knew it. So the widows group helped put a container around the focus on loss of a spouse. I did Reiki therapy, which is this energy moving, kind of like a massage.
I'm a Reiki master.
It really helped me a lot more than I could have imagined.
Yeah.
So and I am doing somatic therapy, which is helping to reset the nervous system, and it's like a massage, so it's wonderful too. So we want to get on the other side of this, and my husband and son would want us to live a life of joy and to thrive, and so because we would want that for them, right? And so we've just invested a lot, and my daughter as well.
Well, I tell you what, boy, what haven't you done is right. That's a good statement to make. What haven't you done? But you obviously acknowledge now as well as back then when it all started, this was not going to get fixed, quote unquote, overnight. This was going to be a long process, and you're still in that 5 years later.
Yeah.
Where do you think you'll be in 5 years? How do you think that?
No idea. I just want to be present in the moment
and
be grateful for what I have right now, and whatever unfolds. So I don't know.
Where Yellow Flowers Bloom is the title of the book. We're talking with Kim Cantin, and you, my friends, are listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is really a pleasure to have Kim Cantin with us. Are you living in Santa Barbara, Montecito? Where are you residing these days?
In Santa Barbara. My daughter doesn't want to be in Montecito. I love Montecito. It feels like home to me, but she feels safer a little bit away from there, which I understand.
I remember when we were first getting ready to move here in 2006, I wanted to be down by the beach. I didn't know how expensive that would be. But we found a place.
But you get a train track.
Exactly.
You get a train area.
By the way, I love the, right, exactly. But I actually love the train. I love taking the train anywhere. I don't care where it's going. As long as it doesn't derail, please. But I have loved living here, maybe because of these different events that happen, because I know the network, because I know the people. And obviously you are now, as I said earlier, you're connected, into that first responder network. How has the community responded, not only to you and your daughter, but to the other, would you say 150 other people who were also injured and had taken to the hospital, as well as those who weren't, who survived, and who have, I guess in the last 5 years, many people have rebuilt there in Montecito.
So how have I been in touch with them?
Have you been in touch with them? And then again,
sure. I mean, look, I was out searching for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I got to meet everyone. Montecito used to have hedges and people like their privacy, and what happened through this is the hedges went away and fences went down, and we all met one another and wanted to care for one another. So I've gotten to know so many fabulous people, and I'm glad I know them. And we all support one another. One of the survivors said she moved back to Montecito because people get her there, right? They get her grief. And it's a support. It's that the town there's a special sort of compassion that's in Montecito and in Santa Barbara.
I think I've only been to Montecito once or twice, and it was to pick up some firewood from a friend of mine out there. But obviously it is considered to be a rather affluent or wealthy part of the South Coast. I don't know how true that is because, well, I don't live there. So
I think that's a little, sure, but everyone lives there.
Yeah.
We had a fixer-upper because that's what we could afford, and we were fixing it up. My husband would paint, and paint does a lot to a house. So it's not all massive estates. It's not. We were a normal house, no gate.
Let me ask you, if I may, from a logistical standpoint, what has happened to the property that you owned? Obviously, the house was gone. There's no more. And we'll talk about another group too that also just sprang up after this event happened. But what has happened to, quote unquote, the lot that you lived on?
Well, I still own it. As a gift, I put hedges up. I've tidied it up. I get it weed whacked when it needs it. And I'm listening to my heart of when I'm ready to do something with it. A lot of people have offered to buy it. They're increasing in value tremendously. It was the proximity to Upper Village and Lower Village, where you could walk everywhere and walk to school, to elementary school, and walk to the church up the street and hear the church bells was wonderful. But I'm not ready yet. And I'm just going to listen to my heart when I'm ready, to do whatever.
Right now, so it's essentially if you will, a vacant lot. There's no structure on it, and yet, as you said, you've got some hedges up as well,
and boulders. I've got about 1,000 boulders.
Oh, they're still there. You left them
they're
there.
tucked. Well, yeah, they're tucked in a corner. At some point, I'll probably find they're pretty valuable. And the boulders, Carside boulders, worth a lot of money. So I'll figure that one out at some point. What I do with it.
I'm curious too. Because we usually don't get into someone else's story. It's usually up to them to tell their story. If I may ask, how is your daughter doing these days? I would assume she's been doing all of the other therapeutic things that you've been doing to try to move forward. And again, as I love the word you use. We use it on this program all the time. And thrive.
Yeah, she's the strongest person I know. And she's doing it. She's investing in her healing, and she's a university student, and she's navigating the grief. She's doing the human experience, and I'm so proud of her. There's no one I love more.
That's wonderful. Well, folks, I haven't forgotten, and I will address it here in just a moment, but we're talking with Kim Cantin, her book, memoir, if you will, of this incredible, unbelievable situation, Where Yellow Flowers Bloom, and you're listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, with Kim Cantin and her book, Where Yellow Flowers Bloom. And when I read the title, I'm going, okay, we've got yellow flowers all over the place right now, Kim. I mean, with all the rains that we've had, they're everywhere, along with the lupin. Matter of fact, I've been trimming the weeds up on the property where we rent. And my wife has asked me if I can, to trim the weeds around the lupin. So there's this very large area, big circular area just off on this hillside under an oak tree. And I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to knock the weeds down around this big circle, and I'll leave the lupin until they die, and then I'll trim the rest of the stuff down. Because it's just so beautiful. I bet there are yellow flowers and there are orange poppies. And I think there's another one, hasn't come out yet, called the Sticky Monkey. I don't know how it got that name, but anyway, all kinds of beautiful things. But in this case, we're talking about yellow flowers and where yellow flowers bloom. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's really significant, including a comment that was made to you about those yellow flowers and your response to it. So tell us how this title was born, if you will.
Sure. So I'll credit my daughter for it. We were talking about it, and she knew everything that had transpired. And if you think of the debris and the mud that ended up in debris piles, it included the toxins from everyone's home as the homes were being obliterated. The paint in the garage, the pesticides, the insulation, the whatever. So what the university professor said was that soil was toxic soup. People who had ingested it, some people even got poison ivy in their GI tract. I mean, it was just unbelievable. They got very sick staff and all the really bad bacteria. And so she's like, it's arsenic and nothing should grow there. And on the pile that we found, what we believe are some of Jack's remains, it was graced with beautiful yellow flowers. And some students working with the professor were really kind and clipped some of these beautiful yellow flowers, and they brought them to my house in a little vase. And they said, life found a way, and they had recovered some bone. And I said, no, love found a way.
That would have been a good title too.
Yeah. But you know what? Yellow flowers bloom. My daughter helped me with. That's really a good metaphor, right? It's a metaphor for all of us to look for the good when maybe there shouldn't be any.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll see it, right? Look for the good.
So let me ask you, what have you seen of the good? I know we've talked a lot about some of it already, but tell us what. I know that you still have some angst, some frustration, and so forth and so on about the process that went on, not only before but also after. But at the same time, it's like, okay, we could stay there and ruin our health, because that's what we would do. We would be ruining our health by hanging on to all of those things. And when working at the Christian radio station, they were always looking for the devil. And I used to say, if you're looking for the devil under every rock, you're going to find him. But if you're looking for God, you're looking for the good under every rock, guess what? You're going to find it. What have you found?
I found the gifts I think I've gotten are more present in the moment. I now have such a strong comparator of bad and sadness and grief and the lowest of the lows, that now, in contrast, things that I might have thought, oh, that's lovely, are just absolutely lovely. So I have, because of the contrast, some of the simple things in life bring me tremendous joy. If it's rubbing my puppy's tummy because he wants it rubbed before he goes to bed, right? There's joy in that. Whereas before I just do it, okay, I'll rub your tummy, go to bed. Now there's like, what? He's wanting some connection, and there's joy in that. And just the simple things. When my roses in the spring start to bloom, there's joy in that. Reconnecting with friends and being with people that I enjoy, there's joy in that. So it's being more present in the moment, and that's a gift, right?
I think it also can, you can also incorporate the word you used earlier, to thrive.
That's what look, if the tables were turned and my daughter and I were in heaven and Dave and Jack were here, we loved each other so much. I would want them to thrive, whatever that looked like. Whatever that looked like, I'd want them to be happy.
Well, I am, first of all, very grateful for you sharing your story. As I said earlier, I know that it doesn't necessarily get easier as the more you share it. But one of the things I do know, because this program for me is my therapy. So I know that you're talking about this is therapeutic for you as well.
Sure. It's part of my healing. Yeah. So thank you.
I want to ask you 3 final questions that I ask all of my guests. Before I do that, though, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. We're here on Mondays at 1 a.m. and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. And we are also podcasting on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations, many other places on the net. And we're also on YouTube. That's right. You can watch these interviews. And speaking of watching, I've got to do a side here. Kim, what is the picture behind you?
It is a Matt Draper picture of the mother of a whale. I have in the other room, I have the image of the baby humpback, and this is called Fluke. It's taken in New Zealand by Matt Draper, and it's the mom.
I'm always curious about the background of why a picture is in the frame as opposed to, and sometimes the book is in the frame and this and that and the other.
Mm.
It's always intriguing to me in that regard. So that's why I asked. To finish up my remarks, also, if you'd like to help support this program, we have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. And if when you go to send support to us, they'll ask you for an email address to whom to send that to. And it is richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. We also want you to spend time. And Kim, I'm sure you've spent an inordinate amount of time in that still, quiet, peaceful, calm place, listening to, if nothing else, just the sounds around you, hopefully in nature, that still small voice. Am I accurate in that?
Mm.
Not so much.
It's been a busy 5 years. I mean, when you got to re-get everything in your house, if you don't have a needle and thread, you don't have a dish, you don't have dresser drawers, you don't have a passport, you don't have ID. It's been a pretty busy 5 years.
Yeah. Well, we are so grateful for your giving us so much time. So we'll get to those 3 final questions. And again, we thank you so much for sharing with us here on the program and giving us so much time. The first of those 3 questions is, who is Kim Cantin?
I'm a person who wants to appreciate life for what it has to offer and be a good mommy to my daughter.
What is, and you may actually have 2 answers to this question, pre and post, but what is your life's purpose?
Well, maybe it was taking care of my family. We really like to volunteer. I really like giving back in the community. Did a lot of volunteering. And I think now, maybe through this book and through speaking, if I can help others going through a really hard, dark time, maybe that's my life purpose, is to let them know if you work at it, strive to get on the other side of it. You're still gonna miss your loved ones, but try to get on the other side of it.
And this one also may have 2 answers, pre and post. What was your best day?
There's 2, when my children were born.
Again, Kim Cantin, kimcantin.com. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I hope that people will avail themselves of connecting with you through your website and can get the support that they need, whether it be through you or there are a myriad of organizations. And the thing I love about hospice, for example, here in Santa Barbara, Hospice of Santa Barbara, if I am correct, there is no charge for the counseling.
Right. It's a really tremendous service, right, to help people during the dark times.
I was even talking with my therapist, a good friend of mine as well, that I've known since I moved here. And we were chatting away about how, well, should I talk to the folks in hospice? Or, I mean, my radio program, I'm talking about this all the time with my sister and my father and my mother and blah, 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 have been for 40 plus years doing these kinds of interviews. Do you really think that I need therapy, or should I just continue down the road? And if I have questions, I can give you a call. He says, yeah, the latter. If you have questions, you can always give me a call, but yeah, you're doing fine. Yeah, you're still going through it. And he'll acknowledge that. And I think that we are always. It's just that it kind of, I don't want to say it necessarily gets easier as the days roll by and you get further and further away from those traumatic events. Because, a passing of a parent or a sibling is pretty traumatic too. But I mean, what you've been through, wow. I mean, you're grieving the loss of a lot of stuff. And you've made it through the other side, even though you're still dealing with, and you're thriving. Am I accurate in that? You're now thriving?
Well, you got to give time, right?
Mhm.
Give time.
Okay.
I'm working toward that. I don't know if I'm totally there yet, but that's my goal destination. Right?
Absolutely. Well, our destination is to wrap up this program. Kim, thank you again for joining us on
Thank
the
you.
program.
Thank you, Richard.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal, Jeanette, I am listening, and Dad, be happy.